It is December 30th, 2021. Welcome to The Daily Rob. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, Odyssey, and across all major podcast platforms. Now, without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Rob Smith.
Hello, Stu. How are you today? Are you feeling froggy? You want to slap anybody?
I don't know if I want to slap anybody per se, but I'm having a pretty
man of peace, aren't you, Stu?
Yes, most definitely. How are you doing?
Oh, I want to slap somebody. When I wake up in the morning, Stu, I want to slap somebody.
Okay. Who's on your slapping list today?
Well, Stu, before we slap anybody, I think we should pay respects to John Madden, the great NFL football coach and TV personality. This is what makes America great, Stu. People like John Madden, a man's man, a successful football coach for the Oakland Raiders. And let's not forget, when the Oakland Raiders were at their top of their form, they were badasses.
Here comes the rush. He sidesteps. Can he throw? He can. The ball flipped forward is loose. A wild scramble. 2 seconds on the clock. Casper grabbing the ball. It is thrown a fumble. Casper has recovered in the end zone. Madden is on the field. He wants to know if it's real. They said yes. Get your big butt out of here. He does. This one will be relived forever.
And Madden was the cause of that. He was the youngest coach in NFL history. He's got the second winningest percentage in NFL history, and he retired at an early age and became an announcer. I kind of like guys who'll give it all up at the top and do something else.
See how heat does come out of the top of your head? Look at it, just coming off at Nate's head there. That's where it escapes. If you have heat in your body and you want to let it out, you take your hat off. Yeah. You know, what you could do is you could have a barbecue on that head.
Nate's got a lot of room to let it out.
Yeah. I mean, you could cook like some burgers on there. Look at, now you're talking. I mean, this is football. When you got steam coming out of your head and your mouth, now you're talking football. And you're controlling that offensive line. This is what it's all about.
He was a beloved figure. And Stu, anybody who starred in a Miller Lite commercial back in those days was a hoss.
Excuse me. I'm not the same crazy coach who used to storm around the sidelines yelling at the officials. I've learned to relax, and I drink light beer from Miller. Do you know that Lite's got 1/3 less calories than a regular beer? And listen to this. Light doesn't fill me up. Besides that, Lite tastes fantastic. Oh, sure, there are a lot of other beers around, and you can drink any one you want. But let me tell you this.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
As I was saying, I don't care what anybody else.
When you start something good, everyone wants a piece of it. Take light beer from Miller. Now there's lots of light beers out there saying they're less filling. Heck, that was the easy part. The hard part is brewing a light beer that tastes great. That's why Light's always brewed only with the finest ingredients. To let all that great beer taste come through for guys like you and me. The taste that's made light beer from Miller America's favorite light beer.
Hey, I always thought it was the easy opening can.
John, you done good, and we'll always remember you. Speaking of NFL players, Stu, we got another hoss on the horizon, and his name is Aaron Rodgers, and he's the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers at historic Lambeau Field. And as you know, he's been outspoken about these COVID mandates, and he said today, science that can't be questioned is propaganda.
If science can't be questioned, it's not science anymore, it's propaganda.
Woo! Wow. You're going to start some shit? That's a deep statement.
The truth. I mean, when somebody comes out with a scientific study, right, what do they always say? They say it's a peer-reviewed, right? What does that mean? It means that people in the same field have gone through it and questioned the hypothesis and questioned the research and looked it up to see, does this research stand up? That's what science is all about. It's about forming hypotheses, questioning those, testing those and then releasing the results. When did science become this blind agreement with, and then not having any debate over what can actually heal people and work for people?
Bam. Still, another person of note died within the past 24 hours. Harry Reid, who was the leader of the Senate, and he was a Democrat. Instead, that's all I will say, because of what my mother taught me when I was a boy.
Very valid.
In other news, Stu, this is just emblematic of the left and socialism being a party of destruction and hatred. They look for ways to tear things down and to find fault with things. There's a New York elementary school, Council Rock Primary School in Brighton. And at their Christmas party, they banned the song Jingle Bells. And the reason is because a Boston University professor wrote that in 2017, that 150 years ago, somebody may have sung that song in blackface. 150 years ago. Stu, I'm sure that Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin sung all the great hymns in church when they were growing up. Does this mean we have to eradicate all of that? It's so stupid, Stu, it's beyond belief. But again, it's somebody with this leftist mindset that wants to tear down. Then the Boston professor was called by the press, and she said, "This is stupid. They should ban this song." She said the song obviously has a Christmas meaning. Then the school came back and said, well, those bells they talk about, they are associated, or could be with slaves who had bells around their necks, such that they could be detected when they tried to escape. Slaves in the South do not have bells around their neck. That's a fiction of Hollywood. And even the school admits that they don't even know if that's true. So, Stu, it's just more woke nonsense. They ought to take the principal and tar and feather him and run him out of town. It's the only way you're going to stop these folks.
An interesting thing was that if we remember Hitler's history, he wanted to be an artist at one point.
He was an artist.
I mean, this was a few years back, but they think they found some Disney prints that Hitler had done where he was copying Walt Disney's art, and those went up for auction. They couldn't prove that they were, I guess, original Hitler's. Jesus. But another interesting thing was that Hitler had a bounty out on Clark Gable's head. Well, not to kill him, but he wanted Clark Gable to be captured and brought to him so they could be friends at some point. But I guess that doesn't mean that we're going to cancel Clark Gable or cancel anything Disney related just because this psycho in Germany was a fan.
Well, how often in politics you get some nutcase who says that he supports you? Well, you can't help it if somebody supports you. And then they try to tag you as though because somebody else likes you, then that means you like whatever they believe in. It's just lunacy, has no logic, and is usually an attempt by the left to discredit and disparage somebody, no matter how wrong it is and how much it would hurt that person.
Well, the president did return Louis C.K.'s donation to his campaign because he didn't want to be affiliated with Louis C.K., the comedian that was perceived to be someone of sexual misconduct.
Ooh. All the while that he has, you're talking about President Biden.
Yes.
Even though he grabbed that girl's breast in the Senate hallway. That's okay. Still, to show you how strange and ridiculous the COVID elites are. Now, we reported on this months ago that this was true because we read it in a report that the CDC said, but they didn't emphasize it. Well, now they are emphasizing it. They're withdrawing the use of PCR tests for COVID, and they admit that the tests do not differentiate between the flu and COVID. Now, Stu, they've been operating with this apparatus for a year and a half. And all their information is based on this, and now they're saying it's wrong. Well, we knew it was wrong. They can't tell the difference between the flu and COVID. And if you don't know what the PCR test is, it's when they stick the swab up your nose, and what it's meant to do is to detect a virus. Doesn't necessarily say which one it is. And there's this Dr. Carrie Mullis. She's a Nobel laureate and inventor of the PCR process, said years ago that the PCR is a process. It does not tell you that you are sick. It was never meant to be a COVID test. Now, here's the person who goddamn creates the damn thing, and the government doesn't listen to them. Well, why don't they listen to them, Stu? Because they want lots of cases so they can put forth their authoritarian control. And speaking of authoritarian control, Stu, the little Hitler with the Brooklyn accent was on TV, I guess, today or something. And he says, if you go to a New Year's Eve party, you shouldn't be hugging and kissing on anybody. Now, Stu, that's going to present a real problem for you, because I know you are going to many New Year's Eve parties, and the chicks can't keep their hands off of you. So I just want you to remember what Dr. Fauci said, Stu. You may have to spray a little bit of anti-chick repellent around you.
If your plans are to go to a 40 to 50 person New Year's Eve party with all the bells and whistles and everybody hugging and kissing and wishing each other a happy new year, I would strongly recommend that this year we do not do that.
Now, Stu, the same fella was on last year was on one of the nighttime talk shows when COVID was much more deadly, and he was asked about social distancing and things like that. But he said it was okay to go on a dating site and then go over and have sex with the stranger who you just met on the dating site. The guy's a frigging nutcase, Stu, and I don't understand why he's not tarring feathers. Speaking of, again, of COVID and how crazy these people are who lack all ability of Aristotelian thought. Twitter today suspended Dr. Robert Malone. And as you know, he is I like his writings, and I agree with much of what he says. He makes a great deal of sense. And if you people out there do not know who Robert Malone is, he's thought to be, he's too modest to say he is, but the inventor of the mRNA vaccines. He has 500,000 people on his Twitter account, and he was to go on the Joe Rogan show today. And what he has said, he was citing, now he has said this, but this is another authoritative source that supports what he has said or has found out independently what he has said is true. The Canadian COVID Care Alliance said that all the actual science and trials that they have done has said that vaccine makers' own trials showed that after 6 months of the COVID-19 vaccines, they cause more harm than good. Exactly what we were talking about yesterday, Stu. They wear out, and then they get to the point that they cause more harm than good. And that they also do not prevent anybody from spreading the virus. So, Stu, we got that. And what else we got here, Stu? We got another totalitarian action by the COVID. Mr. YouTube censor. I didn't mean to say that word. But the COVID crazed lunatics in the Biden administration are preventing Texas and Florida from monoclonal antibody treatments. Now, we reported on this a long time ago, but now the Florida Surgeon General, Joseph Ladapo, came out waving his finger at Health and Human Services Director Xavier Becerra, he's the federal guy, and said, look, y'all aren't giving us this treatment. You're preventing us from having it. And what it effectively is doing, Stu, is killing people. But they do it for political reasons because they don't want to show that these things work. They want everybody jabbed. Anyway, one last story, Stu, that we've reported on before is what's going on in China. Now, Stu, we have the Evergrande Group, which is a huge developer. They own these ghost towns over there, Stu, where they have these buildings. Nobody's in them, and they have bad debt. They defaulted again today on something. And Stu, what we need to recognize that in the United States, we have a long history of law that protects creditors. We have what's called GAAP accounting. We have transparency built into a lot of our long established laws so that we can have a certain glimpse as to how reliable financial figures are. That makes it safe for people to invest and often makes for a level playing field. China is a communist country. Yes, they have some bits and pieces of what we would call capitalism, but it's not really market-based at home. And what we have to remember is this is still the regime, the philosophy of the government that killed 50, 65 million of its own people not that long ago. Do you think you can trust any of their numbers? And I would say, no, you can't. So here's what a financial news commentator said today. China might be the creditor of the world, but it is also riddled with debt. Between public and corporate debt, China is one of the most indebted large economies in the world. Even worse, its state-owned banks are sitting on mountains of bad debts and non-performing loans, particularly in the real estate sector. And this is just on the surface. Underneath lies a staggering quantity of murky debt, off-balance sheet lending, wealth management products, and local government funding vehicles. All told, China's debt is considerably larger than it appears at first glance. And so high on that, some analysts feel it is at dangerous levels and could spill over, doing severe damage to the world economy. So, Stu, I think we're going to see some fallout there. And, they don't affect us, but it also helps some other countries like Vietnam and India and other places. But whenever you have a fallout of this magnitude, it will bring markets down before there's a correction. So it's just something to be aware of, Stu. It's going to happen. You heard it here.
Yeah, that's quite troubling indeed. So what I'm looking at is Cuff Biden Owens. He recently got married to Meghan King. And, you know, this is one of those stories where I think maybe we shouldn't even worry about these people. But in just doing my research on this story, it just was a great example of how deep some of this corruption goes. So Cuff Biden Owens is the nephew of the president. And so Joe Biden's sister, Valerie Biden Owens, she has had a wonderful career off of her brother's just influence. So she is the younger sister of Joe Biden. Barack Obama nominated her as an advisor to the United Nations 71st General Assembly. And she also has worked with Women's Campaign International to help teach women how to develop and grow their political skills.
Who paid for that?
I know. She traveled with her brother Joe Biden to the Vatican City as an official U.S. delegate for the inauguration of Pope Francis. She's been a resident fellow at the Harvard Institute of Politics. She's given TED Talks. And so she's had a fat career being involved with her brother, and she was a senior advisor for the 2020 presidential campaign. And she's going to write an autobiography called Growing Up Biden that will be released in April 2022. And so it goes to show that she's been able to engorge herself off of her brother's success as a politician, whether she has the merits to do so or not. Now, the son...
And don't forget that there is this thing called conflict of interest, and honorable people do not even step forward in her world for fear that it would taint their benefactor and themselves. But of course, we don't have that in this family.
Now, her son is either smart enough to limit his digital presence or aware that, you know, if you start looking, the corruption rears its ugly little head. So he actually is getting divorced from this woman, Meghan King, who was a reality TV show star. She was on the Real Housewives of Orange County. This is her third marriage. And the issue that they apparently had was that he felt their relationship was under the microscope 24/7. She posted too much to Instagram, and she just talks too much about some very personal stuff on Instagram, is way too active.
Huge fake breasts, though.
No, she does not have huge fake breasts.
Because most of those Orange County type women. Well, anyway, go ahead.
But, you know, I'll include this video. It's a video of her talking about her stress and anxiety and how it causes her to lose hair and how she picks at her face and all the things she does to cope with that. You know, she's always taking pictures, and, you know, you go through the Instagram and you wonder, hey, what's going on here? Who's even taking this photo? And so it's very bizarre. And it looks like she's kind of cleaned up her Instagram a little bit of how much involvement there was with Cuff. So he's been purged. And I imagine she's being set up to look like the fall person for why the marriage doesn't work out. And this is somewhat conspiracy oriented, but it looks like you have an army of bots out there posting all over her Instagram now, saying things like, see how that worked out. So shocked that it didn't work out. Sarcasm injected. Ah ha 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 ha. Gasp. Ah ha 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 ha. That did not pan out. Put the phone down and be present with a thinking face. LOL, if you felt you were married for 1,000,000 years, you don't ask for good marriage tips. No wonder he left. LOL, enjoy your life. And so I'm always convinced these are just bots that they stick on their enemies. So there is that.
It does sound like that is the case here.
Yeah, I was just like, guys, I'm not, you don't make me do this every single time. Don't want a life for Christmas.
I believe his mother also got a fat job in Delaware that she didn't deserve. Some, government-funded do-good organization. Of course, the mother's got nowhere near the largesse that Biden's brothers have gotten. Building houses in Iraq when they have absolutely no experience in the home building industry. But anyway, yeah, the whole family is just tied to influence peddling and corruption.
And what you're thinking of is she's the vice chair of both the Biden Institute at the University of Delaware and the Biden Foundation. And then she returns to the University of Delaware to give lectures on politics and her experiences as a woman on the campaign trail.
Every time she speaks or does something, she gets paid for it effectively with government money, with your taxpayer money, Steve.
So something that was interesting that I saw was on the Wikipedia, they mentioned how Valerie Biden Owens met Maya Harris for the first time. And that is going to be Kamala's sister. And so Maya Harris is another person who is engorged in politics and is benefiting from her sister's largesse. And so Maya Harris is a senior associate at PolicyLink from 2008 until 2013. She was the vice president for democracy, rights, and justice at the Ford Foundation. Prior to joining the Ford Foundation, she served as the executive director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Northern California, the largest ACLU affiliate in the country. Harris was formerly a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress and a visiting scholar at Harvard Law School. And
have you noticed, that none of those jobs had anything to do with producing a product or a service that other people voluntarily wanted to buy?
Yeah. I mean, she was also a political and legal analyst for MSNBC from 2017 to 2018. As Clinton's campaign representative to the Democratic Party Platform Committee, Harris helped draft the 2016 platform, and Harris served as campaign chairwoman for her sister's 2020 campaign for president until the campaign's suspension. So obviously she's getting a paycheck for that as well.
Yeah, probably a year's worth of pay for how long was Kamala in the race? About 36 days.
Not long.
Yeah.
And so I did a little bit of a deep dive on her Instagram as well. And she had this picture called, it's all about how great her sister is and how cool Joe Biden is. It's a very sad Instagram. But I did find this. It's called #TeamJoeTalks, the Black Agenda series. And it has the raised Black Power fist or the raised fist, which we all know is a symbol of communism and socialism. And so it's just bizarre that I'm not supposed to raise an eyebrow about that as being something that might not be the smartest thing to include in your official presidential Team Joe Talks series. So that's just kind of super
So
goofy.
when you call her a commie, you've got a good reason to do so. But of course, if you do so, you're going to be immediately tagged as a Joe McCarthy type. That's like it. Even though they've got the symbolism right there for you to see with your own eyes.
Exactly. And my last story, and this is breaking news, so I haven't had time to fully dive into it. Ghislaine Maxwell, 60, is found guilty of 5 of the 6 charges in sex trafficking trial. Jury convicts Jeffrey Epstein's madam, and she now faces up to 60 years in prison. So I'm sure we will dive deeper into that at some point, but interesting to see that she's actually going to be held accountable for it.
Here you go, Stu. We live in a godless society where secular humanism has taken over the real word, and people want to be their own gods and do their own thing, and this just leads to evil. We're in a spiritual crisis, and that's what allows for these pedophile rings that are apparently very prevalent across the country. That's what I gotta say.
I concur. But yeah, so that's all I got for you today.
All right, Stu, very informative.
Yeah, I think the cool part is, just finding out how deep some of this corruption goes and, just turning a light on it. So,
well, Stu, if I was a drinking man, I would be having a Miller Lite in honor of John Madden right now.
He was definitely quite the fellow.
All right, Stu. Well, we'll see you tomorrow.
Right on. And that will be our last episode for the year.
Oh, wow.
So it's going to be quite the doozy, I imagine.
You have to do the biggest news stories of the year like all these other channels do.
Possibly. Yeah, that could be fun. Year in review.
Year in review. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, Stu. Bye.
See ya.
Boom, you hit him. I mean, that's boom. Boom, right to the ground. Some people say, they run in there and they collide or something. I mean, hits in there, boom. That's what I say. He makes a little basketball twist there and pivot, and boom, the ball's there right again between the 8 and the 9. Oh, is he happy?